All right. I am here with J.M. Brandt, coming from an undisclosed location somewhere out in the wilderness of California. You are the editor-in-chief, publisher, and writer of at least one story in the horror anthology, Horror Not Hate, which just launched on Kickstarter last week when we're recording this. And I want to start with, even though I know some of this, what was your drive to do this?
Well, the drive was just reading the news every single day and being disgusted, appalled, incredulous, fearful, angry, like all the superlatives. It was just really, really bad for me to sit idly by and do nothing as tyranny and fascism begins to take hold and people are being singled out and dehumanized and oppressed. So I just wanted to do my part. My wife provoked me to actually take action. She's much more of a actually get your boots on the ground and do something kind of person. She'd been doing protests. She was engaging in mutual aid. She was giving rides to people that were detained during the ICE protests. So, she wanted me to do something, and she knew that I wasn't a protester. I've only done one in my whole life. And this just seemed to be a way of doing some good in the world is raising money.
Yeah, and this, I mean, for you, I know I've read your earlier books that they were largely the J.M. Brandt show. This organizing, gathering a bunch of different creatives from all over the spectrum in the comics industry and levels of experience. This was massive, a massive shift for you.
Yeah, yeah, it's unlike anything I've ever tried doing before, let alone actually done. I had no idea the scope. When I had first spoken to you about the project, that was February of 2025, and I was expecting things to wrap up tidily in time for a May Day or a Juneteenth launch of the Kickstarter and have it just be like this nice little, oh, we can raise, $500 or $1,000 for charities. It just kept ballooning and I kept going with it. And maybe I bit off more than I could chew, but we're at the Kickstarter already. So I think I've steered the ship okay.
Okay.
And I was able to do it within a year, as I promised some of the creators that were wondering if it was ever going to happen. I mean, that's part of the problem too. Is some people had their stories all finished in April, and here it is, and we're still putting the final pages together of the book. In early January now.
But I will say, to that credit, is we know the book exists. It's not like backing something and then, as I unfortunately happen, is I forget that I backed something, and then like a year later this box shows up and I go, oh yeah, oh yeah. This case, the book is almost ready.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
do love the surprise, like, oh, I forgot that I got it because it feels like Christmas, right? But I've only been a part of one other Kickstarter, not something I organized, not something that I worked on as far as the crowdfunding portion of it goes. But it was an anthology where there was a very, very long delay between the campaign ending and the book coming out. And I didn't want to do that to people. And so I sort of made a promise to myself that I would have the book print ready by the time that I collected the funds from the campaign. So that way I can just, as expediently as possible, get the book in people's hands.
yeah, and again, you mentioned raising a little money, and I think you're going to raise more than a little if you meet the goal, which it's doing well. I admit, full disclosure, I have a story in this, and so I am obsessive, and every day going onto the Kickstarter site and saying, "How's this doing?" Because I've never been part of one either. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it's gonna. For those who don't know, the proceeds after printing and distribution will go to Churla and Lambda Law, and I don't know if you've identified others. Uh, and I've had a few creator friends say, "I wish I'd known," and I'm like, "So, you know, before you got this first one out the door, do you think a volume 2 needs to happen?
Yeah, well, it is a stretch goal of ours to guarantee that a second volume will happen. I still have creators coming to me. I had people even just yesterday say, "Hey, are you still taking stories for the book?" And at this point, we're a little too far along for us to just keep adding to it. And plus, I think 264-ish pages is enough for one volume. So
It's
I am
massive.
telling, yeah. Oh, it's gigantic. It's 200 pages of stories and 50 pages right now of illustrations, plus all the other stuff that we're putting into it. A foreword by Chris Condon. It right now we're at 264. It could be a little bit more or less depending on some stragglers and where they're coming in.
Do you
But
do you still have names that you're going to reveal? I mean, I've obviously also, I've run every press release so far, and there were names we talked about months ago. Boy, this was the hardest secret for me to keep for so long, but and there were names we talked about, and I think some are still there, or I don't know if you're holding any back. Like,
yeah, at this point, I don't think that I'm intentionally holding anybody back necessarily from the public, because I mean, now is the time that we're trying to collect funds, because so now is the time to reveal, I would think.
oh yeah.
It's not intentional, and maybe you can remind me of some of the people that it is that we've discussed
Well, I think you
that
told me
haven't been mentioned.
Stephen King was going to be no.
Oh
Was
yeah,
it
yeah.
Steve?
Well,
Yeah.
Steve and I go way back, and so we decided to collaborate on a story, and it's like a sequel to Maximum Overdrive, and
Oh,
but
well, yeah,
yeah,
that's good. So, let's talk about that pitch requirement, because there's an interesting thing, as obviously this is born out of frustration with what's happening. And I'm gonna, say it. We're recording this on a Wednesday night after ICE has just, or a member of ICE has just executed a woman in Minneapolis. Um, but your requirements were, stay away from the politics, which for me was a little hard because that's what was making me mad. you know
right,
um
right.
but this is about homophobia, this is about anti-racism, um what I think we say is civil rights, human rights, versus which have become unfortunately political. But why did you put that restriction on?
Well, so I mean, to clarify a little bit, it's not that I wanted to avoid politics. I wanted to avoid the personalities in politics right now, just because realistically, like, if this is as successful as I maybe dared to dream at some point, it's enough of a target on all of our backs, right? It's on social media. And at the time that I was putting this project together, they were turning people away at airports and deporting people based on their social media accounts and whether they were critical of the current administration or not, which is a fascism in the 21st century, like the tried and true, right? Like, if you're critical of the president, you're not allowed to come in. Like, the fuck is that all about? Especially for a
It's
country
about a
that
president who
talks
doesn't
about,
understand the Constitution. Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I didn't want us to paint ourselves into a corner. I wanted to avoid existing IP for that reason. I didn't want an
Oh yeah.
excuse to get sued, and for the same reason, I wanted to steer clear of depicting actual people
Hmm.
that exist, even if they are in the public purview. Just because there's enough out there to dwell on. These stories are all supposed to be based around um, hate, fascism, transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia, racism, and toxic patriotism. And if that's not enough ammo for socially conscious horror, I don't know what else I could add to that. And it really gets the point across. There's with a couple stories, there's clear analogs to Fox News. There's clear analogs to MAGA, and that sort of thing. But I wanted to avoid putting a specific face to it, because then it would probably just all be, you know, RFK with ants being forced up his dick hole, or Trump
That hadn't
burned
crossed
up
my
a
mind,
stake.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it just it's so easy to demonize like specific people because they are the poster children for all the awfulness that's going on. And you know, I'm not saying that our country was perfect beforehand, not saying that we're not implicit and complicit in human rights atrocities and, you know, genocides and everything else. You know, our country is far from perfect. But we do have this like I was reading social media posts today, and there was a lot of people talking about accelerationism, and we're
I
being.
don't know that term.
Oh, okay. So the idea is, um, there's a contingent of white supremacists and white nationalists that want to accelerate the conflict between races to create a
Ah,
racial holy war. And so incidents like today where, you know, ICE and you said that it was an ICE agent and not ICE. I'd like to argue that and say
oh, no,
one
no,
man.
I know. Look, I've seen way too many actually boring movies about Nazi
Mhm.
Germany, and every time I've seen one, I reviewed for Fanboy Planet and said, but they still need to be made because a new generation needs to understand how easy it is once you've taken off those brakes
Right.
for the
Exactly.
entire system to have allowed brutality
Exactly.
and savagery, and we're seeing it play out. And you know,
Yeah.
so I want to say, you know, I was watching Reacher from
Uh-huh.
years ago, and they called on ICE like you know, ICE is good, and I thought,
Mhm.
wow, how quickly, like if they'd shot that season today, they would not be saying that, you know. So
Mhm.
you know, it is interesting, and as I always, you know, say too, like when uh, the Border Patrol got mad at Captain America for having the Sons of the Serpent patrolling the border. Is it like, if you see yourself in the bad guys in these stories, then maybe you should look at yourself. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, I
I
mean,
mean,
you know,
we're all
that's part of the problem too, is they don't see themselves. You know,
yeah.
you know, it's so much of what's going on, I think, is it's a battle between the people that are able to put themselves in other people's shoes and the people that refuse to. I think that's what it really boils down to, is, you know, people that are self-aware and self-reflective and view themselves as a part of the human race are able to empathize in a way and say, you know, I don't want to have my kid taken away from me and deported to another country. I don't want, you know, my grandmother to be chased down exiting church and thrown into a camp. Like, you know, like for you and me, it's a very easy leap of logic to put ourselves in those situations. And I think the people that are very gung ho about what's going on, you know, with exceptions, obviously, I think are unable or unwilling to see themselves in these scenarios.
Well, and
It's
I also,
others.
yeah, I would also, you know, argue I certainly grew up in a lot of my morality was shaped, aside from Catholicism, by comic books and Star Trek. And yet I always tell people, and they get shocked, you know, Ted Cruz is a huge Star Trek fan. And if there was one politician claiming to be a Star Trek fan who does not understand Star Trek, I mean, you know, it's like, how did we all get a different sense of empathy, you know, or is it
Right.
just power? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't want to get too deep down the political rabbit hole, though we
No.
probably will if we show up at a signing, which I hope, you know, get to have a really good launch.
Yeah.
So keep watching the Kickstarter, people. So you know, I know there's a lot to juggle right now, so thanks for taking a little time, and yeah, I can't wait to see this. Have the copy of the book in my hand. I backed it, and not just because I have a story in it. I backed it because I think it's an important book to exist, and
Thank
so,
you.
and it's not often a horror book gets to say that, you know. And not
Right.
that the horror book is saying that, unless that's a story in there too. So, yeah, all right. Thanks, J.M. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.